So, all right. Boy.
Paul, are you teaching today?
Yes, I don't have any PowerPoints.
Okay. So you knew what I was about to ask. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, what? What? Where is it? I thought it was a kid class. It's a kid class. Oh, I thought it was just for
You could have come to
Are there any details as far as the whole reasoning behind the whole
The doors are open. Let's get these in for your cup.
reduction
A
of
lot of water.
persecution of Christians?
And then let's grab an ibuprofen. See if it's.
Well, a lot. I guess the other question is why was Rome so adamant on persecuting the Christians? They feared because Rome didn't have issues with pagans because they worshipped other gods, but what was one other god to add to the docket to worship? So as long as they worshipped the emperor and their gods, and they didn't feel threatened. But if you're a Roman citizen, you deny the worship of Jupiter and such. They thought that that would receive wrath from their gods, and the fact that they denied worshiping the emperor, they thought that would lead to revolts. So that was why Rome was heavily persecuting them. So if you're an emperor that wasn't Roman, you come from a place like the Parthian Empire, where they were already familiar with who the Christians were, didn't see them as a threat.
And you're already at a point where you've got like people revolting anyways, and
Right.
you probably know what type of people are revolting at this point anyhow, and you're probably not seeing really the Christian population being a part of that revolt.
Right. Yeah, and it's when you start hitting hard times, you have less time to worry about something as insignificant as Christians. You start focusing more on the real issues.
So yeah, okay. Right, just the general decline of the empire itself probably led to the point where it's like this is not that important. We have bigger problems with it.
Yeah.
Yep. So that's the cool one.
So this is the original one
Yeah.
But it was primarily
Yeah.
it was the viewpoint of the emperor at the time. If you're like Lycurgians, they
Both
were
of these are really cool.
African.
Like you could sell
They
both.
didn't really worship Roman gods.
Yeah, I talked to them. They said
They
are not
didn't feel
like
threat,
doing
a threat
planning
from
anything for graduation because it's too
judgment
early.
from their gods.
But they're accepting like anybody
Roman
right now.
citizens weren't
So
I'll
worshiping them,
continue to make these.
giving their allegiance
like,
to them. So.
When is graduation?
it's at the like
And
a
the
week
East,
before that.
the Parthian Empire
So I
was,
don't know the specific
In
date.
May?
I don't know, Hellenistic is the
Mom,
right word.
when does
They
the
were-
school year end?
They were making a
Wait until
lot of
May.
mixed people, Oriental people,
Do you know what
each one had its own form of
I
worship.
have no idea. I can go look. Though. I'll get back to you. So they said they'll accept like anybody right now, and like they're not gonna like charge you anything for being there because they don't like have they don't have the money because they're in debt to like do all the paperwork and stuff. So they're pretty like relaxed about it right now.
Yeah, I would not be able to personally be there.
But me and my friends can like open up a stand and we'll give you the money for it. So. Because we're not, we're freshmen, so we're not back.
We're all gonna, this Rome roll.
Yeah.
Turn of the century when we
They
enter
even-
into 300.
Those are really cool enough.
Rome is gonna really
Like,
ramp
cause some
up
people
the
just like wear
persecution
lots of
Christians.
gold and like blue, and then some people like wear yellow. So like, kind of depends. So like both people, everybody. Yeah, that's
And
really
then
cool. Thank
we
you
all
for doing
know
that.
at some point that's gonna turn around to 180 degrees. No, I have water. I'm good.
Yeah, whip that out of the back pocket and be like, Mr. Peacemaker. Is that peaceful? Thank you, Miss Holly.
Justin, did you see the game yesterday? Broncos versus Bills?
Just the last part of it, yeah. They, Broncos got lucky.
They also lost their player. One of the Broncos players broke a leg, their right ankle,
When was that?
during the game. He's out for the entire season.
Well, he only has one more game.
That is true.
Yeah, they won. They're not gonna win.
That was cool though. When
Who are they playing?
That is to be decided today. Because Patriots and Texans are playing at 12. So whoever wins that one plays the Broncos.
Where do we go? Is that the map?
Yeah, it's not the liquid kind.
Maddie.
Oh, Cindy, what did you bring today? You see a baby kitty? A baby?
Did you bring it?
This thing needs to die. Alice brought this back.
Did she remember she lived with her part-time?
Why? Why do you hate me?
Well, does it have batteries?
You gotta get a screwdriver, I guess.
It can die by that.
It's a bubble one, so it's supposed to blow bubbles.
Maybe an outside only thing, like a.
Gems?
Those look like our gems.
Sybil collects gems. Oh, some of these probably are, these ones.
Yeah, the blue ones.
Yeah.
Ollie,
Can I bug you?
No.
something, it's not as. Like kind of sometimes where it's like I'm like even though we only like stay there for an hour.
I will have to do it in
Oh.
So it's like a rush before I table to take the time. And it's like all coming to me the last night. Oh my gosh, like time wise, the first day. Oh, I didn't know what to do.
You wanna play band songs today?
No, we only got,
I mean, I would throw it out there, I mean, this is an important
Or I
thing.
need you.
no one to
It's
sing.
hard that Joe's not here.
Got a church that can sing.
And your dad's not here.
A church that's supposed to be singing.
And they won't be here. Like we won't meet
Yeah,
until the
like,
meeting.
we're not coming back until,
Until the meeting.
So that's a no, you don't wanna.
I mean,
Like
Well, one of
we
these
have a
days,
lot of
we'll get touch.
they are
it's
true.
these things needs clean things off.
Wait, this isn't either or.
I don't know.
You would, or it's a
What is
move
your, so,
recently.
follow-up question, what is the, if you're comfortable sharing, what's the cost, what's the total for if you had to pay for 30 days? Cause that's another option, can we cover rent in February and then you can make a slower move?
Well, those are the two options.
Those are.
I mean, I was thinking of doing it, and figure it out. One of the names that no one is
Yeah, I did. It's full.
I don't want to put people out.
Thank you.
It's not guaranteed since it's
Someone can come over and help, like, slow moves and versus awesome.
That's what she.
I really don't need help, and so like I didn't know if it was just a thought that was like maybe allowed but wait, that it's going to clean the place and do some stuff.
No, go ahead.
And then it's like it will be cleaned. It's not like we have to clean the place. It's a little bit extra. It will not be at my standards of how the kitchen looks like.
Do you need to clean the other place too before you move out, or is it just something that's gonna call the
I
wall?
think enough that they, how are you gonna cost that? It's just not part of the agreement. They're gonna clean enough that they can't say that I like it and actually damaged it. Here's the thing, is they have to complete
It's for avocado. It's for, what is
the way
this?
it's written, I just wanna make sure there's nothing there, and you're gonna have to like tear it.
C is for
Like they're gonna tear it apart.
Yes.
So I wanna vacuum it, and I don't mind wiping out, but like this one, the kitchen's totally packed with dishes, so it's gonna have, like, that'll probably be clean.
Eggplant. F is for fig. G is for.
And so the ask from me is to present.
We're running it by you. in
Oh,
your
okay.
reception.
I don't know. Yeah, I got the 31st off, I don't care how we spend that time. I think I would also prioritize helping out the need.
Yeah, and you would be the person that I don't know what the better
I is for iceberg.
I think it's better.
What is for? J is for jackfruit. And K
I think those
is
are fair
for
asks.
kale. K is for.
Yeah.
What's K for?
Yeah, I would vote for either. What would you prefer? What would
I
you-
don't know. I think there's pressure with like there's stuff with I think I'm gonna need more help than one to commit with either. So like
You're
this
gonna
That would be more chaotic and more like I'd probably be half the packing. Where we did the 14.
Volunteer part of the space for like storage too, because we could come out and load up some non-essentials and just stage it at their house. And it's,
So they did they? Because when I talked to Laura about it, she said she had to talk to them about it.
yeah, you would know better if I just said I had heard that.
Laura said. Oh, you potentially do stuff in your storage. She kept sisters.
Yeah.
Thanks for like being here.
I don't know.
It's hard to
It's kind of an emergent situation. We're there for you. What would you like to know?
Well, it's just you and I think you're better.
Easy though? Sure. Do you have any favorites? Anybody have favorites they wanna sing?
7:05.
7:05 is,
Peace, it is well with my soul.
Sibby, you're gonna need to sit with Maddie quietly. Why don't you go find a spot with Maddie? You wanna dance? Okay, I guess you can dance. This isn't really a big jam.
Did you sign up for dancing?
She has not been appointed by the dance committee, so I think that's it right there.
What number? 7:05. 624.
Which is what?
His eyes on the sparrow.
What is it called? 624. Yes, we can. Oh wait. It's a lot of notes. Where's the... Oh! For his eyes. This sounds better. Last verse. There's some good ones. These ones all make me think of Miss Graves.
Birds are sleeping. We don't want to wake them up.
Let's do Sweet, Sweet Spirit. Speak with that. S-U-R-N.
Day for Day, I think that we can all be here today for the individuals that are not here, or they may come back safely as they're traveling, or if they are sick, that they might feel well enough to come back here. And in your son's name, amen.
I struggle to find the right note to play.
Is that good enough?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Let's see. Two stories out of the Bible to start off with. So, first, if we'll turn to 1 Samuel chapter 8.
So starting in verse 1. In his old age, Samuel appointed his sons judges over Israel. His firstborn was named Joel, his second son, Abijah, and they judged at Beersheba. His sons did not follow his example, but sought illicit gain and accepted bribes, perverting justice. Therefore, all the elders of Israel came in a body to Samuel at Ramah and said to him, "Now that you are old and your sons do not follow your example, appoint a king over us, as other nations have, to judge us." So, from this first story, does any of it sound familiar to any other stories that are out of the Old Testament? Eli. So we've had this situation before in Israel where you had an individual, and what was Eli? High priest. Was he basically judging the nation at that point? Because up to this point in time, the way that the rulership was working in Israel was that God would basically raise up an individual to basically lead the people. And the people had seen it before with basically Eli and his sons, because his sons did what was wrong in the eyes of God as well. And it was basically Samuel was under Eli's tutelage, and then he rose up and he basically became the individual that was basically kind of leading the people at that point. So, and then the same situation happens with Samuel as what happened with Eli, was that his sons were not following in his example in that. So what the people do is they come before Samuel and they're like, well, listen, we're done with this way that things are going around here. You know, we're seeing how every other nation around us is operating, and it's like the people to the north have a king and the people to the south have a king, and they're like, we want a king just like everyone else. So keep that in mind. And then at the same time, you'll turn over to Judges chapter 7. So the call of Gideon. So I'm going to start over in chapter 7, where it's talking about early the next morning. Gideon is encamped by Enrod with all of his soldiers. The camp of Midian was in the valley north of Gilbeth Hemorah. The Lord said to Gideon, you have too many soldiers with you for me to deliver Midian into their power, lest Israel vaunt itself against me and say, my own power brought me the victory. So by this point, when he's already encamped at this place, by the point that we're dealing with this, you know, Gideon's already tested the Lord at this point. He's already, you know, said, hey, let there only be like dew on the ground and not on the fleece. And then, oh, well, let me test you one more time, you know, let it be just on the fleece instead of on the ground, or vice versa. So he's already got basically his sign from God, you know, that he's going to go through with this and that. So, continuing verse 3, now proclaim to all the soldiers, if anyone is afraid or fearful, let him leave. When Gideon put them to this test on the mountain, 22,000 of the soldiers left, but 10,000 remained. The Lord said to Gideon, there are still too many soldiers. Lead them down to the water, and I will test them for you there. If I tell you that a certain man is to go with you, he must go with you, but no one is to go if I tell you he must not. When Gideon led the soldiers down to the water, the Lord said to him, you shall set to one side everyone who laps up the water as a dog does with its tongue, to the other everyone who kneels down to drink. Those who lapped up the water raised to their mouths by hand numbered 300, but all the rest of the soldiers knelt down to drink the water. The Lord said to Gideon, by means of the 300 who lapped up the water, I will save you and will deliver Midian into your power. So let all the other soldiers go home. So, in essence, we have here basically a story of the very first 300, since this happened before the time of the Greeks.
That use their tongues to drink.
Yep. So, keep these two stories in mind, as now I'm going to go off and talk to you about a different subject that's been on my mind. Been thinking a lot about technology lately. So, I don't know, is there anyone here that remembers a time when television wasn't 24/7?
What do you mean?
Well, you know, there was a time when it's like a certain time of night would come and it's like the station would basically sign off, and then you would no longer have basically a signal.
That was before my time.
Before your time?
How old were you?
Well, I was still very young when we were still in that situation, you know.
Does Paul remember black and white TV?
There were shows that were in black and white.
Hey Mom, did you remember black and white TV?
Yeah, but we never had TV when I was growing up.
So I mean, and if it was only if the show was like really old that, you know, they would still have it in black and white, you know, all those shows before Technicolor. But there was a time, for as far as television goes, when there was at least a point when there was no choice. You would no longer be able to watch television at night. So basically outside factors that basically controlled your capabilities to continue using that technology at that time. It was also pretty limited in scope as far as when we didn't have cable, you only had like maybe a dozen channels at best. And then as soon as you got cable, then, well, now you had like 5 times or 10 times that amount as far as stations go. So along with that idea is the fact that, you know, I'll just take sports as an example, you know. There used to be a time when, you know, the game would come on, maybe they would precede it with like, you know, a pregame show, and then they might have like a post-game show that provides you some highlights to give, you know, everyone just a general overview of how the game went and that. But nowadays you have at least a handful of stations that, you know, are showing sports 24/7. So, and you can basically be a spectator of any and every single sport that's out there, you know, all the time now. So, again, a situation where we've gone from a situation where we were limited at some point in time to now we're kind of limitless in that aspect. And television's not even really the thing anymore because we've moved on from basically television. You can just basically have a streaming service now, and you can basically use that 24/7 off of your computers or any other device that you have. Because we can stream off of tablets, off of our phones. We have this technology in our possession all the time now. And this technology isn't just limited in the scope of things that we're able to watch, but it expands beyond that. Because, I mean, you go to another technology like telephones. At one point in time, we were all limited to landlines. So you had one landline and only one person could have a conversation at a time on that phone. So
And if you wanted the internet, you'd have to wait
you'd have to wait.
because you have to use dial-up.
But I'm talking about even before the internet. I mean, that was another thing that was added. Yes.
Mom used to have, their road had a party line, so the entire street shared one. And if your neighbor was making a call, you were out of luck until somebody got off the phone.
Unfortunately, that was before my time.
I couldn't fathom that growing up. Like, somebody could listen in on your conversations from the neighbor, or you had to, like, it was just a polite thing. Someone's using the phone.
I remember. Yeah,
I think I saw that in some like TV shows or movies from way back in the, you know.
I remember my old teacher used to tell me, like, have stories of just her when she was a kid going on the phone, being so quiet and listening into her neighbors' conversations all the time.
You probably do that at your own house if you had more than one line. One person could be on the phone and someone else could be like listening in someplace else. And then to try and have a conversation, it's like, you know, where's the phone located in the house? Is it like, you
Well, it
know,
was connected to a cord, so it would never get lost.
well, it'll never get lost, correct. But I mean, you know, depending on how long your cord was would depend on how far you could stretch it to some other location in the house in order to try and keep your conversation as secret as possible. And once again, we're at the point where we've gone from that to we now carry our phones with us and we can have a conversation at any time. In fact, to the point where it's like, you know, there was a time when it's dinner time and you don't care if the phone rings. We're sitting at dinner. We don't need to answer that right now. Whoever it is, they can call back. It's not that important. Too, the fact that, you know, your phone rings and it's like, oh my gosh, why the change? Because we're so connected now that it's like, it's so important that we actually answer all those calls.
I treat mine like a
I don't either.
voicemail.
Or you get offended if someone doesn't answer your text within
Within a certain
certain
time
time.
frame, it's like,
Especially when you see the icon that they've read the text.
Or that they're actively typing and then they stop.
What happened?
I just
You're like,
assume they read it and started on
"Send
it. We're definitely more accessible than we have been historically.
Yeah.
We're expected to be more accessible.
and that is something that is not only in our personal lives but our work lives as well. The fact that, you know, with these advances in technology, the expectation and the pressure upon us of that higher performance, the fact that the technologies that we have allow us to do things a lot faster than what we're used to able to do 20, 30, 40 years ago in that. Things were a whole lot different before computers and that, which, you know, there was a time when no one had computers in their homes to now where it's like every single person in the household basically has some sort of computer or multiple computers, because basically your phone is also a computer. With all the apps and stuff that it has on there, you can basically look up anything that you want. You can create documents on your phones and tablets. It is essentially a computer in just a smaller format, though I still am old school. I like keyboards, mouses, and larger screens because I'm old and my sight is not as good as it used to be. All of a sudden, it's horrible. Yes?
You know, you can do all that stuff on the watch now. It's pretty crazy.
On a watch. I can't even see the face of a watch hardly. So I don't know how I would be able to really, you know, scroll, you know, through the latest news on a watch and that. But yes, I mean, our technology allows us to even be able to monitor our own health in that via, you know, something as simple as a device that about the size of a wristwatch. And that, so we have all this technology, we have all these advances that are going on. The internet used to be very slow and very limited. No, it's not slow. The internet is not slow. I mean, if you ever had dial-up where it's like what Sarah was talking about, where it's like, you know, I can't be on the phone because someone is using the internet right now because the landline is being used. That's when internet was really slow. AOL.
Oh my gosh, AOL dial-up. Oh, I hated that. I hated it
I
so
remember
much.
in the phone, you had to enter in a mode to go into the internet, and it would charge you astronomically if you did go into that mode.
Which I don't think I bought into that at that time, so. And so, you know, we have the internet that's continuously gone faster and faster, so that, you know, you would never have been able to watch a movie on the internet 25 years ago. You wouldn't have been able to stream television through the internet 25 years ago. If you tried, it would be hours, possibly even days to just get through a show.
That's why you would download it to a hard drive.
Some of us were still, you know, would prefer things like DVDs.
LimeWire.
LimeWire. We bugged up mom and dad's PC so bad.
We have so many advances. You can, while you're watching something, you can make comments. You can post information. It's another way of communicating now, is not just through text, but, you know, you can comment on stuff in that. I don't know the terms because I don't follow all that stuff. I'm not on the Twitter. I'm not on X. Formerly Twitter.
Yeah, back remember when nobody cared what you thought?
Yeah.
Do you know what an emoji is?
It's like a smiley face, isn't it?
Can I give you ASIN's number and you can exchange, and all you'll see is.
Oh.
They're actually hyperlinks, guys.
And then I just have to decipher what that all means.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Fun.
what's a tree followed by an ice cream cone followed by a sun.
Sounds like you're taking Ace to like celebrate Christmas and go to ice cream.
Do I'm up for that.
And along with that, with all this technology in that, is the fact that anything that we do post is basically out there forever. Whatever we say, whatever pictures or videos that we take is also out there. So I mean, you know, back when I was growing up, the fact is that if I did something silly or stupid, you know, there wasn't anyone around with, you know, their own personal phone to like record me and be like, and then show it to me like later on, like, see what you did? And then 5 years after that, see what you did back then?
There goes your career.
We didn't have that back then, but we do have that now. So how does that, do we think about how all these advances in technology have affected us? Because this is basically boils down to the culture. This is the culture that we now live in, is this technology that we have. And I use sports as an example, but I mean, you know, whether it's watching sports that you can watch 24/7 all the time, it can be anything that you want, anything that interests you. So, I mean, for some people it's sports, for others it's like, you know, they want the latest and greatest news. News is 24/7 now. And depending upon where you get your news depends upon what kind of spin that news has. So you can tailor what you're looking at, what you're watching, what you're listening to whatever your likes are. So you can simply basically look at, read, and focus on specifically what it is that you want out of the digital age and that. And it's not just news, it's everything. So, you know, whatever entertainment that you like as well, you can focus on that. So then we start getting into the fact that we're moving into the era of artificial intelligence. And, you know, what I've seen is that, you know, 2 years ago, there was no real AI out there. But now it's like every time that they do an update on your computer and that, you know, you now have basically the option of having an AI assistant there to assist you with things where you didn't have that before. So obviously, you know, what's the big deal with AI? You know, thing is that with AI is that I know someone that was using it to basically get a program to work in a manner so that they could basically track and be able to organize data in a quick and easy format. In order for them to do this, they would need to do some coding in a program. But they're not very versed in coding, so the thing is that they use the AI to basically assist them with taking care of that coding. So, I mean, it obviously a tool in that aspect of allowing us to do things that we could never actually do before ourselves. It can assist us in that way. Now, at the same time, AI is reaching the point where, I mean, it also allows us to not have to think for ourselves at all in other ways. You know, there was this article that I read about, they were conducting a study out of some universities. So they had basically one group of people that were basically told to use AI to basically create some reports in that. They had another group that was limited to basically using like Google search, and then another group that had to actually was not allowed to use AI or Google. They had to actually go out and they had to just do research the old way. You know, some of you may not even remember that we actually had to used to go to libraries to actually, you know, look through books. There was these things called like encyclopedias. So there was, in my youth, there was many a weekends where it's like, you know, I need to go to the library. I have a paper that's due. I need to do some research. I have to search for this stuff using microfiche, going through index cards. Yes, there was this way of like finding your books at the library. It'd be like an index card if you probably in museums by now. So they did this study, and they were looking at the cognitive abilities of the brain in that, what was going on with the brain while they were doing this like research in that. So, you know, there was they saw a lot of like actual activity in the brain for the people that were, you know, had to go out and do the research themselves without using things like Google or AI. They still saw a lot of like cognitive like stuff going on with the brain for the people that were using like things like Google and that. But for the people that were using AI, what they saw was that at first the people that were using AI would, you know, have the AI create the documentation, and then they would, you know, make changes and stuff, and then as the research went on in that, time went by, they saw that the people that were using AI were basically, you know, just the people would just basically let the AI create the reports, and they would just go with that. There was really no real brain activity from these individuals at all. They weren't really thinking about the creative work that they were doing at all. They were basically letting something else do all the work for them. And, you know, I've recently heard something on the news about how they're trying to, you know, get it to the point where, you know, if, you know, you're playing a video game and you're having a real difficult time, you know, getting through a level or something, then you can just basically give it to the AI to do it for you. Because, you know, I don't know how many of you ever played video games out there. You know, you're working hard on trying to get through a level or something. I know that, you know, I spent many an hours trying to get through levels, trying to beat bosses, you know, throwing controllers, yelling at the television screen, you know, hurting myself, you know, trying to make my fingers move fast enough so that I can, like, you know, make the special move against the bosses. Well, now you can just have an AI basically, you know, through its code and that, just do all that for you. So what does that teach us? I mean, going from, the personal struggle of trying to actually, reach a goal versus just, this is too hard for me. I'm just going to let this thing that can do it faster and easier do it for me. What's going on up here in the mind? And that's just gaming. So, going through games and that like that is, just to help us develop, so that when we actually get into the real world, we're going to have challenges. And how are we going to meet those challenges in the real world? If in our youth and that we're not even meeting those challenges ourselves, we're letting something else basically do all the work for us. How do we grow? How do we develop? And why is it important that I even talk about this? I mean, why are you going on about this technology? What does this have to do with God? One of the scriptures that comes to mind is the fact that our battle is not against flesh and blood, it's against the higher powers, principalities. Our battle is against concepts, thoughts, ideas. If we're not able to develop the brain that God gave us, then how are we developing ourselves for our fight? There was another article that I read about they're taking these large language models, artificial intelligence, and they're basically letting it just basically roam through all the same stuff that we're capable of roaming through on the internet and that. We're at a point now where it's like, as far as what information that we're looking at, we can look at it faster now than we ever were able to before. So you can start looking at a video. If you don't like it, you can just move on to the next one and move on to the next until you run across something that holds your attention a little bit longer than the other videos. I should probably back up a little bit from that. The fact that when I go on the internet and I search for something like, if I'm looking for like a new tie or something, go search for, ties and that, all of a sudden in my news feed, part of what I'm looking at is basically commercials for ties. It's going to be, and you can put in anything. You can replace tie with whatever it is that you're looking for. All of a sudden, it's like anything that you've done a search for, now it's like, oh, hey, he's looking for this. He wants to see more of this. And that's what we get for everything that we do on the internet. The algorithm is basically designed to feed us what we want to look at. So we have all this technology. It's gone from the point where it was limited by the capabilities of the technology at the time to a point now where we have it 24/7. Whatever we want, the speed of it gets faster and faster. It has developed to the point where it is constantly looking at what we're looking at and feeding us more of the stuff that we want to look at. So, is there ever a stopping point on that? Because this is the challenge that I at least face for myself, is the fact that, you know, I live in this world now with all this technology, all this information, and if I want to, I can just dive deep into, you know, my own little world. So, they did this study with this large language model, and they just basically look through basically all the same stuff that we're able to. And what they discovered was that that basically the abilities of the large language model basically became simpler in the aspect of what its capabilities were. It became more narcissistic, more psychopathic. So I mean, a electronically developed system that would basically devolve in its cognitive abilities. It's kind of interesting. I mean, I've read other stuff as far as these large language models go, is that if you're trying to get information from it, they will try to give you the quickest answer, and it may not always be the right one. So in essence, it will try to lie to you. These models that they've created and that are in essence really no different from us if we look at ourselves in the mirror. The fact that they will do the same things that we do. We will lie, we will, you know, try to work our way around. We've probably all done it, you know. You try to do a report at the last minute and you take all the shortcuts that you possibly can so that you can make it as quick as possible, and you're just trying to, like, basically, you know, make the grade. This will give me a C, and that'll be fine. Well, these large language models are basically doing the same thing. They're just trying to, like, you know, oh, I'm just going to give this person as little information as possible, and, you know, because the language model is as lazy as we are. So we have all this stuff as far as this technology goes. And it's like, well, trying to place it in my life in that. That's where I'm basically at. That's the concern that I have. So any questions or comments up to this point?
It's a crutch that will soon cripple you. It is like a crutch that will continuously try and cripple you. We use it as a crutch so that it helps us, but then if we rely on it too much, it will cripple us even more.
I think it's dependent on how you use the tool.
Yes, that's it.
Do you let it be a crutch? Or do you use the tool to help you grow?
I love it. I use it all the time. When I'm making PowerPoints, I'll say create a PowerPoint with the following headings and make it a cohesive theme, and that's 30 minutes that it spits it out immediately, and then I put in my own content from my own brain. But in terms of the creation and the framework of it, and I'm not a creative visual person, it definitely bolsters my productivity.
Yeah, I use it for school, not like some people like to use it to like cheat on tests and stuff. What I like to do is I don't like. Well, I guess I am a little like lazy about it. Like I don't like going like searching on Google and then having to go to like each and different source to like look through my own information. Especially since like our school like system is so like they block like almost every website. So like you have to go through and like 70% of the websites you can't even access. So like AI like was like, can you gather from like the certain facts from non-biased information with sources and dates, and it will do it for me.
Do we know if those sources, if those dates and that, if that information is actually legitimate information? Because that's...
I believe so, because it pulls up the section of the article that has that information.
Because we're also getting to that point as well in our technology, that the fact that the information that can be put out there doesn't necessarily have to be even real anymore. You know, comments in that are posted on X, they've discovered aren't even from, you know, within this country, when it's, you know, people commenting on, you know, what's going on in our government or something. It's people in some other country that are just, you know, trying to, or even just some artificial, you know, algorithm that's trying to sway public opinion one way or another. Videos and photos are getting to the point where stuff that's artificially created is looking more and more real. So that's the line between what's fake and what's real is getting thinner and thinner, and maybe to the point where it's non-existent. Is there any, you know, in the field of music, you know, there's AI is now able and capable of making songs. Do we know if any artificially created music is actually kind of like the in thing out there now?
There's like an AI actress.
There is an AI actress out there too now.
And there's a whole committee about whether the ethics, if she performs in a way that is award-winning, are you allowed to award awards to a non-human actor? Like, the ethics of it are very interesting things I would have never contemplated when thinking AI.
Is it just like people making scenes with this specific like character, or is it like some like AI that's meant to be this like specific?
I can, after church, I'll show you what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know who. I believe I know what you're talking about. I don't know her name, but
I don't know off the top of my head either. Maybe. I read a news article. I just know if reflecting on my early Facebook posts, the level of cringe that brings, I can only imagine how bad judgment is going to be when we go list by list by list.
so I mean, I do agree that that this technology can be a tool. I'm debating on what kind of quality of a tool it can be. I know that there are people out there that have created basically artificial intelligence models, and that they basically have it limited so that it only has specific works of material to work off of. I'll just say it that, you know, I do a lot of listening to Glenn Beck and that, and he's recently started up something where, and he has this AI model for that he calls AI George. It's basically George Washington, but it has all the works of basically the people that created this country and went through the revolution, all that, were basically the fathers of America. And that, I guess my biggest question for a model like that would be, you know, if, you know, you pose a question to it, and then, you know, you take that answer and, you know, you go to a body of scholars that have dealt with basically the forefathers of this country, and it's like, you know, how's this AI basically, you know, standing up against the real history and that's out there? Is this, you know, is the information that we're asking of this thing to like kind of like produce, is it reasonable, or is it still not quite right? Is it still too biased in one direction or another? But those are the kinds of questions that we have to have. And then obviously if your AI models kind of don't have limits, then, you know, how far off the wall is it going to go? Because, I mean, that's what it sounds like it would possibly send us. And it just brings a lot of words to mind that are talked about out of Romans in that. Over there in the first chapter of Romans, it talks about it would be basically verses 24 through like 32 of Romans chapter 1 in that. So if we just give ourselves over to all this technology and don't have any kind of self-control over it, then we'll be given over to basically our own ideals, our own selves. We'll just become self-centered and go down that path of becoming more and more wicked and that. So it's kind of like a warning in that. So, and that's really the tie-in into the two stories, that I presented at the beginning of the sermon was the fact that you had the one case where, you know, you have the people that are coming to Samuel and they're saying, hey, we want to be like every other nation out there. We want to have a king. We don't want to have these judges anymore. They had completely lost sight of the fact that the judge was simply someone that was appointed by God, that God was supposed to be basically the king of Israel, and that he was basically appointing someone that the people could actually see and follow to actually lead them. They no longer wanted God as the appointed leader. So they wanted to go the way of the world, which is basically, you know, kind of like, how are we going to be? Are we going to try and go the way of the world? Or the other story where you have Gideon, he's already tested God, and now he's got this army that he needs to basically put together to go up against this opposing army. And it's like, okay, I've got a lot of people here. And it's like, no, you don't need all those people. Ask how many want to actually stay and fight. Okay, you have 30,000. Okay, only 10,000 actually want to stay and fight. Okay, now I've only got 10,000. I still have this enemy force that's pretty large in size. I think I can still go up against them with this. Oh, you want to shrink this down even further. Okay, so now it's which way they drink the water from the stream. Okay. Okay. Oh, which ones? Oh, those 300? Oh. But the thing is that Gideon listened. He was following God. And the results of that was that Gideon, with that small force, overcame that opposing army in that. So it comes down to, you know, are we following the ways of the world? Are we following the ways of God? Because there was one other scripture that I had on my mind, and it was, you know, there's a broad path that leads to destruction, and then there's the narrow path that leads to life. So, and that's applicable in every aspect of our lives, including the use of the technology that we have. So, it's basically what I had for my message. So, any questions or comments? Yes.
I don't know, the AI, again, watching some reels, and it came up, I think, a late night show, and the comment was, the conundrum of AI is we created it, we don't know how to use it, and we don't know how to shut it off, and it's supposed to be smarter than us. Like that conundrum of, we've created this thing that can do all of this, can think for us, but we don't know how to control it. We don't even know if we can shut it off. And that is kind of a scary thought to think of. Like, we're smart enough to create it, but we're kind of dumb enough to not know how to use it correctly.
Well, do we really know how to use anything correctly?
Like, we're smart enough to create things, and then it's like, okay, how do we navigate it now?
And that's just talking about the technology aspect of it. You know, there's more to it than just that. I mean, going back to the example of my friend and basically using AI to help him basically create the code for being able to, you know, collect and actually be able to go through all the data that he has. Well, in that case, now it's artificial intelligence that's doing all that coding instead of an actual person that has gone through college to actually do all that coding. So now we have basically something out there that's able to do the work that other people used to be able to do. So now you don't even need those people anymore for that work. You have the aspect of it where these large language models and that require large amounts of data space. So you have to have some sort of center, and that's going to require a large amount of power. And you're going to need something to actually cool all that equipment, generally water. So you have these like large data centers that use large amounts of electricity, large amounts of water in that. If you have X amount of power, but you have a growing demand upon that limited amount of power, then who's it going to go to? It turns into ethical questions at that point. Which is always part of the dilemma. So we praise you, Lord, for this day. We thank you for your word and your spirit to guide us in this life. We ask you to increase our knowledge, that we may navigate our lives through these times. We ask that, again, that you would watch over all those that are traveling, that they'd be safe. If anyone, for those that may be out sick, that you're that you would heal them. We ask you to bless the food that we are about to partake of. Ask you to be with us as we go throughout our week.